Qbot infections are spreading. The bounty-hunting gig economy apparently has its first millionaire. Observers are liking what they see in U.S. Cyber Command's persistent engagement. Canada mulls the extradition of Huawei's CFO to the U.S. The U.S. continues to call Huawei a security risk, and Huawei has some things to say back. Dr. Dena Haritos Tsamitis from Carnegie Mellon joins us to talk culture and what she's looking forward to at next week's RSA conference. And the Momo challenge is a viral online craze, but not the way you may have heard. Now I'd like to share some words about our sponsor, Akamai. You're familiar with cloud security, but what about security at the edge? With the world's only intelligent edge platform, Akamai stops attacks at the edge before they reach your apps, infrastructure, and people. Their visibility into 178 billion attacks per day means that Akamai stays ahead of the latest threats, including responding to zero-day vulnerabilities. With 24/7 365 Security Operations Center support around the globe and over 300 security experts in-house, Akamai surrounds and protects your users wherever they are, at the core, in the cloud, or at the edge. If you're going to RSA this year, visit Akamai in the North Hall, booth 6153, to take part in their Crack the Code challenge for an opportunity to win a new 3D printer. Akamai, intelligent security starts at the edge. Learn more at Akamai, that's akamai.com/security. And we thank Akamai for sponsoring our show. The CyberWire podcast is made possible in part by RSA Conference, taking place March 4th through the 8th at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. The CyberWire is a proud media sponsor of RSA Conference, where the world talks security. Learn more and register today at rsaconference.com/cyberwire19. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Friday, March 1st, 2019. Researchers at security firm Varonis are describing a major campaign to distribute Qbot banking malware. Qbot is polymorphic and has evolved continuously since its discovery in 2009. Varonis says thousands of machines are now under Qbot's control. They've determined through observation of Qbot's command and control server that infections have been found in Europe, Asia, and South America, and that U.S. corporations have come in for particular attention. Bug hunters may be viewed as the gig economy portion of the cybersecurity sector. Both HackerOne and BugCrowd have reports out on the subsector, and they say, understandably since they're in the business, that the sector is a healthy one, with bug hunters and bug bounty programs finding one another. One of the bug hunters associated with HackerOne has now earned more than $1 million since he signed up with HackerOne in 2015. Santiago Lopez, 19 years old, self-taught, and a native of Argentina, earned his bounties by finding 1,670 unique bugs in various products. Congratulations to him. We wonder what Mr. Lopez's success, however, in finding flaws in software written by or for some very wealthy companies says about compensation in that gig economy. U.S. Cyber Command's action against Russian troll farms during the U.S. midterm election cycle has been receiving generally favorable reviews, with the Atlantic Council's Jason Healy offering a particularly enthusiastic one in Cipher Brief. It was, Healy says, a specific operation to stop a specific adversary from carrying out a particular operation. It wasn't deterrence and it wasn't signaling. It was, he writes, more like blocking a punch. An op-ed in Lawfare by Ben Buchanan sees the Cyber Command operation as giving some concrete form to what policymakers have called a strategy of persistent engagement, and makes the case to policymakers that Cyber Command has something to offer. Buchanan concludes by writing, quote, "In this sense, the operation might have more of a long-term impact in the United States than it did in Russia. Clarifying the art of the possible might be the operation's real lasting success." End quote. Canada has just decided to proceed with an extradition hearing for Meng Wanzhou, Huawei's CFO. She's currently being detained in Vancouver, where a Canadian court will decide whether she's to be extradited to the U.S., where she will face charges related to money laundering and sanctions evasion. There's been no decision yet, but observers think it fairly likely that she'll eventually be turned over to American authorities. The U.S. shows no disposition to relent on its view of Huawei as a security threat. Secretary of State Pompeo is in Manila, and he's urging the Philippines in particular, because after all, he's in Manila, and the world as a whole should keep its eyes wide open about the security problem having Chinese gear in their infrastructure presents. Huawei has been defending itself on two fronts, with a mixture of sharp and soothing words. First is the legal front. The company has entered pleas of not guilty to U.S. charges of industrial espionage. And it's also saying that CFO Meng did nothing we tell you. Second, in response to U.S. and Australian insistence that its devices represent a security risk, it continues to deny vigorously that it effectively operates as an arm of Chinese intelligence services. The honeyed words come with the company's expressions of willingness to submit to collaborative vetting of its hardware with governments, mostly in Europe and the Five Eyes, who wish to see such reassurance. The sharper words come, as they so often do, in the form of tu quo que. The you did it too, and you're another bounces off me and sticks to you, in this case comes courtesy of Huawei's rotating chairman, Guo Ping. What about all that U.S. NSA and Cyber Command stuff we keep hearing about? Huh? What about that? You're spying too. He cites some of Mr. Snowden's reports as the basis for his complaint, and goes so far as to point out that maybe the U.S. intelligence community has its nose out of joint because Huawei won't oblige them by putting U.S. backdoors into its equipment. And besides, Chairman Gao says, all this U.S. woofing is really about competition, not security. The Americans, he says, know they're being outcompeted, and they don't like it. In his words, quote, the global campaign against Huawei has little to do with security and everything to do with America's desire to suppress a rising technological competitor, end quote. Finally, consider the Momo challenge we've been hearing about, the one that's supposed to be inducing teens, tweens, and even younger internet users to harm themselves. It's a real enough instance of a widespread, virally spread belief mania, but not in the way it seemed. Here's the claim. There are embedded video clips, illustrated by the big eyes, distorted face of Momo, that have been inserted into otherwise innocent YouTube videos. Those embedded clips are said to challenge young people to harm themselves in progressively more dangerous ways, up to the point of suicide. And they're said to show them ways of carrying out their self-destruction. YouTube makes the right noises about taking children's safety seriously, but says it can't find any of the things people say they found. The Washington Post, Naked Security, and others have been looking for the videos, and they can't find them either. Naked Security calls the Momo challenge a modern equivalent of a campfire-side horror story. It was discussed last summer as a haunted WhatsApp account that featured Momo's picture. It resurfaced in an English Facebook group a couple of weeks ago and rapidly entered public discourse over there as part of a larger discussion of content moderation fueled by Parliament's release of a report on fake news. So there's really no Momo challenge, and no one's been able to find the victims who are said to have died taking it. The mania, then, isn't a viral craze to follow Momo, but a viral craze of fear that children are going to hurt themselves. Everyone can, we think, agree that suicide prevention is a serious and important matter, and who wouldn't want to protect children? But there are enough real things to worry about without the scary stories. So no Momo, and if you're warned about it in your Facebook group or via the email list you're on, tell people there's no epidemic of meme-driven suicide. There's enough online foolishness without creating more of it. And now, a word from our sponsor, Looking Glass Cyber Solutions. Cyber threats are a risky business. Criminals are taking bigger risks than ever before to acquire your organization's sensitive data. As pressure increases, you need a partner to help manage and control your digital business risk. Slide into Looking Glass's booth number 2327 in the South Hall at RSA Conference 2019 to hear how you can better manage your organization's risky business by leveraging their 20-plus years of investment and tradecraft for an outside-in view of your security posture. Or step away from the hectic expo floor for a demo tailored to your business needs in the Looking Glass meeting suites at the Marriott Marquis. Reserve your demo and learn more about Looking Glass at RSA Conference or visit their website, lookingglasscyber.com. That's lookingglasscyber.com. And we thank Looking Glass for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Professor Awais Rashid. He's a professor of cybersecurity at University of Bristol. Awais, it's great to have you back. We wanted to touch today on edge computing and some of the security challenges there. Can we start off with just a description? What are we talking about when we say edge computing?
So edge computing, I suppose, is an extension of the Internet of Things world. We think of deploying a range of wireless sensors and actuators that can work in remote locations and provide all sorts of information back, often through the cloud, but equally may be able to impact the surrounding environment. A good example of this would be, for example, in agricultural technologies where, large-scale farms can use it for crop management, for treatment against particular types of infections or particular types of insects or whatever. Another example would be, remote monitoring of, say, large-scale pipelines and so on and so forth. And some of these sensors can be very simple and not so powerful, and others can have some more computational resource within them.
And so what are some of the specific challenges here, and how do you propose we address them?
Well, how long is a piece of string is the question. There are a number of challenges, and there are the usual issues that when you have low computation power devices, how do you actually ensure that they can have the level of security that you would want to implement on those devices? The big challenge, of course, comes is the remote nature of the sensors and actuators themselves, because potentially attackers can have physical access to these devices because they cannot always be within they're almost always never within a physically constrained environment. The other challenge, of course, is how do you actually trust the data that is coming from these devices? How do you actually demonstrate provenance of that data? How do you distinguish between what is an error due to just failure and an error due to malicious interference with the device?
Yeah, that's really a fascinating element of this to me, that the notion that you can have a remote sensor somewhere, and if a hacker gets in there and causes it to send you false information about whether a valve is open or closed or something like that, well, that can be a potentially catastrophic problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other challenge, of course, is that depending on how the systems are architected, you can potentially enter through some of the edge devices and then pivot on to the more back-end systems in itself to move across to different parts of the system. I think the key here has to be that we have to have more effective mechanisms for provenance of these devices and the data that is coming from these devices. And then sitting underneath are all sorts of challenges of having effective access control models, effective, cryptographic techniques, low power cryptographic techniques, as well as, new types of, for example, intrusion detection and prevention systems that actually are potentially based on data provenance and ways to actually verify that provenance in the first instance and authenticity of the device. And so there is a range of challenges all the way from the underlying hardware all the way up to the stack to algorithms that may process data from that in order to detect intrusions or prevent intrusions.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting challenge. Awais Rashid, thanks for joining us. Now I'd like to share some words about our sponsor, Cylance. AI stands for artificial intelligence, of course, but nowadays it also means all image or anthropomorphized incredibly. There's a serious reality under the hype, but it can be difficult to see through to it. As the experts at Cylance will tell you, AI isn't a self-aware Skynet ready to send in the Terminators. It's a tool that trains on data to develop useful algorithms. And like all tools, it can be used for good or evil. If you'd like to learn more about how AI is being weaponized and what you can do about it, visit threatvector.cylance.com and check out their report, Security Using AI for Evil. That's threatvector.cylance.com. We're happy to say that their products protect our systems here at the CyberWire, and we thank Cylance for sponsoring our show. The CyberWire is proud to be a media sponsor of the 2019 RSA Conference, taking place March 4th through the 8th at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. Today, we welcome Dr. Dena Haritos Tsamitis, member of the 2019 RSA Conference Advisory Board and director of the Information Networking Institute at Carnegie Mellon University.
We've done a lot. So as director of the Information Networking Institute, I've been director since 2004, and I was associate director previously. And when I first started, we only had 6% women in my graduate programs. And it forced me to really look at what possibly could be the reason for that. So I looked into the research of my colleagues, Lenore Bloom and Carol Fries, who are in the computer science department. And their findings suggest that culture plays a huge role in being able to attract women in particular to computer science and information technology programs. Based upon their recommendations, I took a look at our culture, addressed many of the cultural issues that I thought were perhaps barriers, but also, and very importantly, I was very proactive in building partnerships with organizations that are focused on attracting women, retaining women, developing women and underrepresented minorities so that my students could engage with them. Through these partnerships, I've established fellowships and scholarships for women and underrepresented minorities. I've established mentoring programs, a number of initiatives to, again, not only attract women to the program and underrepresented minorities, but help retain them and develop them and nurture them and inspire them while they're students in my program and as they go on to the field to later become leaders. And the great thing that I've seen happen is that many of these alumni who've been a part of these partnership programs with organizations have gone onto the field and be leaders in the area. One important initiative that I created was Women at I&I that we fondly call WINNI. It's an organization with the mission of helping attract, retain, nurture, and inspire our students in the program, but also to build this network that our students can have as they go on to the field and stay connected with the I&I. And I've seen that the leaders of each class have taken the lessons that they've learned and the inspiration that they felt, and they've gone on to create organizations and employee research groups in the organizations they serve. One student who graduated maybe 12 years ago went on to create such an organization in Apple.
And how do you measure success? How has it been going?
Well, it's been going well because when I started in 2002, we had 6% women, and our last incoming class was well over 40% women.
Wow.
We don't even look at retention rates because it's very rare for a student not to graduate who's entered the program. We've made a huge investment into our admissions criteria. So we've been very successful and effective in selecting students, admitting students who will be successful in our program. We've done a lot. We've made a huge investment in developing this pipeline, but there's more work to be done. And I'm talking about graduate programs, pipeline into graduate programs. So when we think about undergraduate students, the pipeline is K through 12.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the RSA conference that's coming up next week. You are a member of the RSA Conference Advisory Board. I'm wondering, what are you looking forward to with this week to come?
Well, I'm looking forward to a number of initiatives that are going to take place. One in particular I am very invested in is the RSA Scholars Program. I think this was launched about 5 years ago, and the RSA Scholars Program brings in students from across the country to present their research in a poster session to conference attendees. And in addition, these RSA scholars have access to, they get a free registration for the conference. Their travel is supported, their travel and accommodations, but they get to interact with the keynote speakers. They have VIP seating. They're invited to lunches and dinners with the speakers. And it just gives them such an amazing access to the network, the cybersecurity network, and exposure to a breadth of companies and organizations. And it's a really special program. And I've seen in these years since we've been involved, we were the first institution to get involved, how they've strengthened the program and ensured that the schools represented were diverse, the topics are diverse, and it's really, I think, a gem there that I would love to create awareness about, that, because I'd like to see these students supported by conference attendees. I encourage all the conference attendees to attend the poster presentation and get to know these students. These are great students to hire. Universities can see them as prospective PhD students or graduate students. So, but they're amazing talent with great potential. And like I said, I'm very proud of it. And I'm very much looking forward to that. We have 4 students going this year. And then I've seen in the conference program a number of presentations that do focus on diversity and how to develop the pipeline. There's another session that talks about creating, one of my good friends, Joyce Brocaglia, as well as a colleague here from Carnegie Mellon University, Bobby Stempfli, are presenting on presentation techniques for women in the field. So there are a number of exciting topics that are integrated throughout the conference that are part of this diversity initiative that RSA has invested a lot of time and effort in and has received a lot of feedback from their advisory board on. So I'm really looking forward to see how it plays out. And I'm sure that conference attendees will notice this, will take note.
That's Dr. Dena Haritos Tsamitis. She's director of the Information Networking Institute and founding director of Education, Training, and Outreach at Scilab at Carnegie Mellon University. She's also an advisory board member of RSA Conference. And that's the CyberWire. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Observit, the leading insider threat management platform. Learn more at observit.com. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technology. Our CyberWire editor is John Petrick, social media editor Jennifer Iben, technical editor Chris Russell, executive editor Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.